right, hi everybody. Like Andrea said, my name is Hava. I'm a soil scientist on the SnapPlus team, and I have a few slides to share with you today, just as sort of a preliminary information. And then we will go into the exciting part, which is the demo, and hopefully spur some questions and things like that. So
It
let's
looks great,
see.
Hava.
Great. Okay. And as far as jumping in, one of the challenges with these virtual options is that when I'm presenting, I can't always see the chat immediately that comes in. So I'll do these slides and then pull up the chat and check to see if anybody had questions on the slides. And then I'll move into the demo and just make sure to pause as we move from page to page in the demo and folks can speak up or ask questions. Because sometimes it's hard to know what your question is until you've actually seen what's going on. So we have some exciting news from SnapPlus, which is that we have a version of version 3, so up online and ready for you to start learning. So I'm going to give you the big takeaway points here in the slides, and then we'll go and look more at the website. What I'm showing here is a web address, v3.snapplus.wisc.edu. That's where you can go online and log in and be able to use this yourself. So that's the first takeaway point today, is that it's time to start learning version 3. You are not required to use it right away, but we're thinking about the next 12 months in terms of a chance for people to start learning this. The next big message I have for you is that we are still adding features and fixes. So we wanted to make sure to get some of this stuff out there and available to you all with enough time that people can start training and using it and getting used to some of the differences. But if you log on today and you say, wait, I don't see my favorite button, I don't see my favorite calculator, I don't see this thing, it's possible that that is still being added. So the other piece of information I have is that we have a new help website, which is called a wiki, and I have the web address on the screen here. And we have pages there that identify a list of the things that we're still working on, that they're coming, they're not there yet. And then we also have a page where we will update with information. When we do eventually add features, we'll add the date and we'll say, okay, on September 15th, for example, here are the 3 or 4 things that changed or got fixed. So as you're logging on and starting to learn, you might see new tabs added and new fixes happening in the coming months. So definitely know that this is active. And if you see anything, which I'm sure you will, this is one good reason to test it out before we all need to use it, is we'll find bugs, we'll find errors. Definitely let us know that, because we know that this is a process and this is a brand new program that we've been working on testing a lot. But until we get it in front of people that have their own workflow, some of these things we don't find until we do that. And then I just want to reiterate what the timeline is here. So you've probably all been hearing that version 3 of SnapPlus is coming, and it's been coming for a while. So what does that mean in terms of when you can use it, when you might be able to start submitting plans that have been written in version 3? So we're thinking the time period from now until this time next year, so the next year or so, is everybody's opportunity to start learning version 3, start attending trainings, and transitioning. Our intention is that by this time next year, the program is ready for you to start writing your plans for the 2026 cropping season in version 3. But it's also important to know that we are not taking away that desktop version, which would be version 2. So if you're using SnapPlus right now, you're used to using it on your desktop and that type of thing. While we are no longer updating the desktop version of SnapPlus, we do not yet have a retirement date for that. So we definitely recognize that this is a transition process for people that are using SnapPlus. They need to learn the new system. They need to transition their data and their plans over. So it's not like there's going to be a hard cutoff next August where we say, you must move online. We know that that's a transition. There is a few things to be aware of, though, as we think about moving forward with SnapPlus. A lot of the stuff that we've talked about today in terms of changes to the 590 standard, changes to nutrient recommendations, as those types of things happen, and I would add a third point there for anybody that's in the Silurian bedrock area, is the ATCAP 50 and the Silurian rules that are now coming up and will be relevant in the future. Those updates to policy and compliance messages will be reflected in version 3, but not in version 2, the desktop software. So again, we're not making additional updates to that desktop software at this time. And there will become a point in the future when we get those new standards that those will only be available in version 3. So we're not there yet, but I just want to help everybody understand, like, this is these are sort of timelines that we're working with when we think about when the software is available and when you'll need to start using it. And then one final thing I want to address, because it's come up a lot, and I think it's a big part of this transition to version 3 of SnapPlus, which is online, are questions around, like, what does it really mean that SnapPlus version 3 is a web-based application? And especially, what does that mean for my data and my databases? So that is the big shift from moving from a desktop to a web application, is that all of your planning is happening online on an internet browser. And the good news about that is that you can access that from any computer. It does not need to be a Windows computer. You can use a Mac computer. If you can get online on the internet, you can log in to version 3 of SnapPlus. Technically, you could get to it on your phone. I've tried it. I really don't recommend it because it's not optimized for mobile in terms of the amount of data that's displayed, but that is how it functions. It's a website. You can log in from any device that has an internet connection. And some of the questions that we get around that, around data, are like, okay, we're right now in the desktop application, we're used to being able to make a copy of that snap.db file. We can put it on a flash drive and share that to a colleague. We can attach that snap database file to an email. Well, what does that mean in SnapPlus v3? Like, how does that all work? So I'll talk about that and I'll demonstrate that in a minute. But I want to take a second to address this question of, like, data confidentiality and privacy now that everything is on the web and you're not managing this on your desktop anymore. And so one of the things you'll see on the SnapPlus v3 website that I just want to call everybody's attention to is that we do have a data confidentiality statement that the UW lawyers wrote for us. And the reason I want to bring this to your attention is that as we all conduct a lot of our life on the internet now, it's important to be aware of like what's going on with the data and how is your data being stored. And we want to be really clear about that at SnapPlus, about what our role is and what your role is and what's going on with this data. So I just have a couple little excerpts from the confidentiality statement that you can read in full on the website. But the first really important point is that data entered by farms into SnapPlus, that's not SnapPlus's data, that's considered the confidential property of the farm. So we view our role at SnapPlus, we maintain the system, but just because your data is on our system does not mean it's our data. It is the confidential property of the farm. And so another key point with that is that it will not be accessed or used by us for any purpose without written authorization. So again, this goes back to the idea that we don't own that data, you own the data. And then the final key point with that is that in addition to not accessing or using it, we're not releasing it to any third party. So we're not saying, hey, agencies, come peek in this database that we have all this data. No, that's not how this works. We will not be released to any third party, again, without written authorization unless required by law. So just wanted to point this out because we do get questions about it, and I wanted to make clear what the SnapPlus role is in all of this, which is that we provide a tool and we provide a platform for writing nutrient management plans, but that does not mean that it is our data. So hopefully that clears up questions. And I'm going to transition now to the demo. So if you did have specific questions about any of these slides that I just talked about, I'm going to peek at the chat and then we'll go on to actually looking at version 3 of SnapPlus. So one moment as we make this transition. Oh yes, Chris asked if I can share the V3 link. I absolutely can. I'll do that now in the chat. And then you'll get to see me do it on my screen. So I just dropped in the chat the URL to version 3 of SnapPlus. And then what I'll show you is what you see. You might be doing this already since you're online when you click into that URL. All right, so let's just pretend we're starting from the beginning and we're typing in that web address that I put in the chat, v3.snapplus.wisc.edu. When I go to that, I get redirected to a sign-in page. And so this is one of the big things about SnapPlus being online is that you do need you need an email address and a password that is unique to you in order to log on and see. So right now you're seeing that I have my email and password saved and I can click sign in. If I did not have a login already, what I would do is go to this sign up link, which is right at the bottom, and I would set one up for myself. And then I would have the ability to get into version 3 of SnapPlus. So let's click sign in here. And we land on the home page. I'm just going to take a moment to get my chat up on my screen so that I can see any questions that come in as we go here. There it is. All right, so we're on the home page. When I log in, this is the first thing I see. At the top, I just want to point out that we have some helpful links here, both to our change log, which tells you what kind of updates are happening in SnapPlus. This is on our new help page. So this is where you could go if you want to know, like, hey, I logged in a couple weeks ago. I didn't see what I was looking for. Maybe they've added something since the last time I logged in. This is the page where you would go to see that. We also have links to the list of things that are under construction, again, at the very top in this blue bar here. So if we click that, we can see some of the features of things that you know you do in SnapPlus, but you're not yet seeing it in version 3. We've tried to list most of those here. It's possible I've missed some things, but maybe you're like, hey, where's my Lime? Where's my Lime recommendations and Lime applications? That's coming, but it's not there yet. So this is a good page to refer to if you're thinking of something that you're like, I thought I was going to see this and I'm just not finding it. It's possible that it's in the queue to be added in the future. So this page is a good page to access if you have those types of questions, and then you're welcome to email us too. Next up is that confidentiality statement that I already talked a little bit about, but that appears at the top of the website. And I want to spend a little bit of time now talking about how we actually get started creating a plan in version 3. So that would be these 3 buttons in the middle would be 3 different options for ways to get started. If I want to do a blank slate, start something completely new, I could create a farm manually by clicking this plus button here. And that would open up a new plan that I could give a name and then start entering in my data. If I just really wanted a quick start, like, hey, I'm logged in, but I just want to click around, don't make me actually do any work to enter data, you could add the sample farm. And so the sample farm is this little farm that we made up that has maybe 6 or 7 fields. It has some crops, it has some nutrient applications. It has enough stuff in there that if you just wanted to log in today and click around and look at things and see how they look, this would be a good way to go. And no other work required. You can add the sample farm and start to get in there and make changes and just check it out. But the important feature that I think is going to be most helpful if you're starting to learn how to use version 3 is this ability to upload a database from a SnapPlus to a snap.db file. So this would be an existing plan that you have on your computer in SnapPlus. And this is just a simple upload process. And what we do is click this button, and then we have the option to navigate in our file explorer on your computer to where you have your SnapPlus database files. You can see I've got a folder here for the workshops this year, and I happen to have a database file for Riverside Farm 2024 here. So if I want to take this V2 plan and convert it, upload it to version 3, what I would do is select it and click open. And then I want you to notice at the bottom of my screen, I have this little blue progress bar. It was working along. That's telling me that we're in the process of taking the data that's in that SnapPlus 2 database, and we're converting it and we're changing the structure of it so that it's compatible with the web version of version 3. So I think this is a really nice way to go because you can take a plan that you already kind of know what it looks like in version 2 of SnapPlus. You've seen it before, you know what should be happening. You can upload that and see what it looks like in version 3. And that's kind of a nice way to start making that translation in your head of what some of these different features are going to look like. So once my progress bar finished, you might have noticed that that Riverside Farm 2024 that I selected was added to this table that's at the bottom of my screen. So you can see I've logged in and I have a couple different plans or farms accessible to me in this table. And so some of these I've made previously. Let's say that I review a lot of plans and my table is like really long. I just have a ton of stuff in there. You also have the ability to search for some of the different plans that are available to you with your account. So let's say that I knew I was looking for the Riverside Farm plan, but I wanted to search for it. As I start typing river in the search box, it narrows down my list of farms to those that have that river word. So I can use the search to kind of narrow my list if I know that I'm looking for a plan, but maybe I have a lot of farms in my list. I'm also able to sort this table, if you look at these little arrow buttons here, that's telling me I can sort alphabetically, sort by the owner, sort by the different permission levels. So that's another way just to start to navigate it as you make plans and have a list here on this table. That's an easy way to navigate and go through them. A couple other things I'll point out. Well, I'll go to the next page and then we'll talk about that. So when I select the farm from my list, I clicked on that row in the table. You'll notice that I jumped to a new page, which is the farm page. So if we just kind of get our bearings here in version 3, what we're looking at along the top are links that probably are familiar to you. They're a lot of the same ones that you're used to in SnapPlus version 2. So we have a farm page, fields, we have nutrients, management, all these things at the top. So when I talk about these, I'll talk about these as pages. And then when you click on a page, you will see different tabs in the white that's down below here. So I'm in the farm page and we're looking at the overview tab. And so this is information about the owner of the operation and then planner information here, farm narrative, annual notes. This is very similar to what you might see in SnapPlus version 2. I can click on different tabs to access them here. So selecting crops, selecting counties. We have a settings page where these are types of things that you might select related to manure credits or winter spreading strategies that would be relevant across this whole farm, across this whole plan. So you might be making some of those decisions that you want reflected on every field using this page. One of the tabs that I want to spend a little bit of time on because it's new and it's a new way that we think about sharing and reviewing these plans is this idea of permissions and different roles within the farm permissions. So because SnapPlus version 3 is online and you log in with your username and your password to access it, that means that we have the ability to share that plan with our colleagues, with somebody that might be reviewing the plan. And we also have the ability to control what type of permissions or what level of access that person that we're sharing with is getting. So let's just look at this page a little bit. Right now, this is me, this is my email, HK Blair, and we're looking at a table and we see that I have the primary administrator role in this table, which means I have ability to edit this plan. I also have the ability to completely delete this plan as the primary administrator. So you can only have one primary administrator role. That has to be one person. You can't have two. But let's say that I wanted to add my colleague Laura and have her be able to see and access this plan too. So what I would need to do is enter her email address here. And this happens to be her email address. And then I would select a permission level for Laura. So as the primary administrator, I have the sort of the power to select any of the other roles for the person that I'm adding to the plan. So this list is sort of in order of power, or in order of the amount of access that you have to the plan. So an administrator of the plan has the ability to edit the plan and also the ability to add other users, but they can only add users that have a level of access that's below them. And that's kind of the pattern here, is that if you are at a certain level of access, you can add other users, but only users that have levels of access below you. So it's sort of a pyramid, right? So I'm the primary administrator. I can add anybody here. I could even make Laura the primary administrator if I wanted to. But let's say that I just make Laura a planner. So then I selected planner from that list. And what happens now is on Laura's end, if she was to log in to version 3 of SnapPlus, she would see right by this little envelope in the upper right-hand corner, there'd be like a red blinking indicator. And if she clicked on that, she would see farm invitations and it would say, you have an invitation as planner to Riverside Farm 2024. So one key point here is that this is not generating an email to Laura. It is sending her the notification within SnapPlus version 3. So let's say Laura's never logged into SnapPlus version 3. She would not have a way to know that that is waiting for her at this time. So you do need to communicate with the people that you're sharing the plan with and make sure that they're aware of what you're doing and that they actually do have a version 3 SnapPlus login. We've gotten some requests that, oh, could you make it so it sends an email? Could you do that? I'm not promising anything. We can look into it, but at this time we want to avoid spamming people in any way. And so you do need to confirm that you have the correct email address for people that you're entering and confirm that they also have a SnapPlus version 3 account at this time. So that is one important point when you're going and you're sharing with people that you might want to be reviewing or seeing the plan. If we can talk a little bit more about some of these different levels of access, again, administrators and planners, both of those people have the ability to make changes to the plan. So if you have one of those role types, you can add crops, you can add applications, you can, be going in and actually editing the plan. We also have two types of access that are read-only, meaning they can get in and they can view these different pages. So they could click on the tabs, they could see the data, but that they cannot edit anything. So they can't go in and select a different manure source. They can't go in and change a crop or an application rate. It would merely be viewing the different pages and the different parts of this plan, and then the ability to generate reports from the plan. So that's the idea behind the read-only access levels, is that person can get in there and see what's happening, but they can't make any changes. We also have a feature right now to address the situation where maybe Laura and I are online at the same time, and we both click on Riverside Farm 2024. In that case, whoever clicked it first, whoever opened the farm first, is the person who has the ability to edit. And then let's say in this case, I was first, I'm in here, I'm working on this plan. If Laura clicks on it and logs in, she will get a little message saying, hey, a different user is already in here editing this plan. So you can see it, but you currently can only view it. You can't actually make any changes until they close out. And we did that to prevent conflicts, people editing at the same time. That would be a huge mess. So it's only one person allowed to edit the plan at a time, and it's whoever opened up that plan first. Right now, the setting is if you open a plan and then let's say you go away to lunch for 2 hours, we have it set to automatically close that plan after 15 minutes of inactivity. So it's a little bit like what your bank does to you if you ever log into your online banking and then they give you a timer and they say, hey, are you still there? Because if you're not there, we're just going to close this and you're automatically going to be closed out of this plan. So we made that decision to try to prevent the scenario where somebody might have you got a million things open on your computer, you got a plan open, and then you walk away to lunch or you go home for the day and leave that open. And maybe that's preventing somebody else from getting in there and editing the plan that they might need to. So that's currently how that setting works for multiple people that might be trying to get in and look at the same plan. All right, I'm going to pause here and just look at the chat and see if anybody has questions on some of these permissions so far. I'm not seeing anything. Any people are welcome to unmute themselves too. One question here. How does this work for county reviewers? All right, so there could be different workflows depending on your county. Right now, we do recommend that everybody have their own individual login. So that means that it's not really set up right now to be, let's say at your county office, it's not set up to have one single county email like, staff@danecounty.blah, blah, blah. So we would want everybody to have an individual login. And that means that counties and other people that are reviewing plans need to have a strategy within your office that kind of fits with how you review plans in terms of who should have access. Like if you're reviewing a plan and another colleague reviews a plan, do you always have multiple people from the office who are shared on it, or what that would be? What we anticipate and what we've heard is that for county reviewers, you would probably be seeing plans come through with the read-only access, which means that you could get in here and see things just like you might be able to open up a database. And you can also generate reports, so maybe you're used to seeing the 590 checklist and the NM2 compliance report. If you have read-only access, you can generate a report like that from a plan. And then we'll get to reports, but similar to version 2, you will still have the ability to, if you're a plan writer and you're submitting reports to a county, you're still going to be able to generate that 590 checklist, the PDF, the Excel reports. So if you're accustomed to getting a package of reports and reviewing those as a county, that's still going to be an option too. And so what we have planned in that case is that we'll have some more ability to customize the reports and to pull together multiple reports as a zip file. So maybe we can streamline some of that where we're saying, okay, I want to create a reports package, and that'll generate all the reports from this plan, put them in a zip file, and then that can be attached in an email too and submitted to the county if you're used to getting those SnapPlus reports and reviewing those.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. This is Sherry. That was my question. I guess one other thing I'm wondering, so there's not, as a read only, there's not really going to be a way to like just change one thing to see what happens, like see what kind of effect it has, like a different kind of tillage or something like that.
Right, there is not, but let me talk through a situation that could work for that, because I know that I've heard from other like county staff that that's definitely something that you do to kind of help think about a plan and help out with the plan. And we want to be careful that, so a couple thoughts there. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but a couple thoughts. So one way that we can start to explore those different scenarios, like if you receive a plan, it's like, oh, hey, what if we just change this one thing or this one tillage? One way that you could do that is by going in and I'm going to get on the farm page here, going in and making a copy, having the planner make a copy of the plan that's like, hey, this is our let's say that we were going to try out cover crops. Like this is our cover crop version of Riverside Farm. And then, make a copy that first make the copy, then rename the copy to say, hey, this is my cover crop copy. I'm just going to change the cover crop, and then we can run the reports and see what's happening when we add the cover crops to those fields. And the reason that maybe that's a good way to go is that you make that change, but that change isn't going to mess up their sort of working version of the plan. The other thing that I will note is that we do plan to have an archive feature for submitted versions of plans. So when you get to the point where your plan is done for this one specific year and you're ready to run your reports and send it in, then we will have a button. I'm not sure exactly where the button will appear. It'll probably be one of these farm pages that there will be an archive button that's like a snapshot. And it's not a snapshot. I shouldn't use that word. It's like a point in time. It's saying, this was my submittal for the 2024 plan or for the 2025 plan. And that's like frozen in time so that then the planner can move on with life and with planning, and they're probably actively updating some of this, but the version that got submitted is like saved at that point of submittal so that we know what did that plan look like when it was submitted and we were generated these reports in case questions come up and you do need to go back. So that's another way that we are thinking about this, is recognizing that people have versions of plans that they're working on, and then they have the plan that they submit, that we do want to know, like, what was the state of that plan upon submittal. And we hope that through the combination of copying and taking snapshots, which is still an option, and archiving, we've covered some of the different options for scenarios where people want to just quick try one thing, but maybe not be totally committed to it. You could do a snapshot if you have edit access to that farm. So I'm going to take a snapshot now. I'm going to go in and I'm going to change the tillage on these 3 fields and see what happens. If something gets screwed up or you need to go back, you can go back to a snapshot. But snapshots are not intended to be long-term storage. So if you wanted to archive a plan and say, hey, I want to make sure I have a version of my plan that was the 2025 submittal, that would be a scenario for archiving something and knowing that we can go back to that specific point in time. Because we have a limit of 5 snapshots available for a given plan. So this is not supposed to be a long-term, snapshot is not a long-term storage option, but archiving could be. And if you want to make big changes to the plan and not mess it up, that would be a potential situation for copying the plan at a certain point, changing the label, and then going in and being able to have these 2 side-by-side scenarios where it's like, okay, I made a big changes on one of these, but I want to be able to compare what's the impact when I run the reports on these 2 versions. Okay, Aaron asked, how are changes tracked over time? Is there a version history? There is not a version history, so there's a couple ways to answer that question. You are able to take up to 5 snapshots if you know you're making specific changes that you want to be able to go back to over time. We do have a request in that we're working on to include the last modified date and time on the plan. So we do have the ability to say that, and it appears on a couple of the reports right now, but we got a request to put it somewhere on one of these farm pages, just because we know that there might be multiple users working on it. So that's another way that that's a way of tracking modifications, not necessarily what was changed, but the last time that the plan was edited. And then what we don't have is, maybe you're used to using Google Docs or something that allows you to see a version history and go back like to the very beginning of time, every single change. We do not have that. We do not have that available. So if you are making changes in a big way and you might want to go back, that's a situation where you should be taking a snapshot and knowing that you'll be able to go back to this specific point in time in the plan if you're trying something out and you want to make sure to kind of save something. Let's see. Colleen asks, as a county reviewer, would we have to request different permissions from the plan owner than just the read only to be able to run different scenarios? Yes. So in that case, if you wanted to, this would be a conversation between the county reviewer and the planner is how you want to orchestrate this. So if you are wanting to run different scenarios, then the most likely situation would be that the planner or the person that does have edit access would make a copy and give you access to edit the copy of that plan. Could be one way that works. Or maybe you have an agreement or you're sitting down in front of a screen with somebody and you're both looking at the same thing. Maybe they give you planner access and you have an agreement for what gets changed. But we just want to because multiple people can be editing a plan, we just want to emphasize that there needs to be communication about levels of access beforehand for people that are reviewing or hoping to edit plans so that it's clear which versions people are looking at and what kind of access they have. But yeah, I think as far as the copy farm goes, you can't do that with the read-only access. You would need to have that planner or administrator access to do that and manipulate it. All right. Other questions related to farm permissions? I know this is kind of a change. It's different from the way that we do it now, but it will allow us to still have the plan information available in different ways. And if you kind of heard me talk about these different roles and different types of permission today, and you were not hearing something that kind of fits the specific workflow that your group has, or maybe your agency or colleagues have, please let us know. One thing that we've heard multiple times is that county reviewers that might be getting a read-only access, they do want to have the ability to download shape files of field boundaries. So maybe we need to have an additional item on this list of roles that allows somebody with that access to download field boundaries. Let's see, Stefan asks, I know you mentioned this is not optimized for mobile use. Could permissions be a prioritized item for mobile so timely changes could be made? That's interesting because I haven't tried permissions. I wonder if you could do that now, Stefan. I could ask the developers about that. I think you could get to that page. It's just a question of how it would look on the phone. So I'll definitely check that out today because I could see a scenario where maybe somebody needs to get in and can't get in, and you just need to type in a quick email address and send that off. Certainly, I could understand the need for that. So I'll see what it looks like on my phone today and go from there. And then, yeah, Colleen comments that yes, ability to download shape files and field boundaries would be helpful. Yeah, we know that that's something that counties do. And so it might just be something where we have another item in this list so that we can accommodate different planners and people's preferences about the level of access that different types of users have to the plan. All right. So I'm happy to continue taking questions, but I am going to move on to show you a few more things here in version 3 of SnapPlus. And maybe Andrea, if I can get a quick time check, what is our ending time today? Is it noon?
It's supposed to go till 1, but you have till noon to do your presentation and we'll wrap up with NPM after you.
Oh, yes. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure because I knew we were a little ahead of schedule. So that's great.
Nope,
We have plenty
you're
of
doing
time.
great.
So let's go to the fields page. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the different tabs here. So on the fields page, the first thing that we go to is this overview tab. And we're looking at a table here of all of the different fields that are part of this plan. So I have the names are 1 through 9, and then I have a rented field. And then we see information about whether or not that field has been assigned to a sub farm, is it active, county, and then your cropping acres. So that's information that you're probably used to seeing. Other controls that you see here along the top is that you can toggle different options for whether or not you're displaying inactive fields. All my fields are active right now, but if I were to turn one off right now, that disappeared because it's an inactive field, but maybe I want to see it anyway. So I can toggle that option and field 9 comes back here because it's an inactive field. I can add new fields here or copy fields. I can also import soil tests on this page. So if you've, some people, the way they like to start a new SnapPlus plan is to actually start with that soil test import, because you might already have all of your field names like written out exactly as you want them in the soil test. And one easy way to just pop those into SnapPlus is to upload that file. And then all of your names are going to get typed in according to that import. So that's one easy thing that we know people do, and you can do in version 3 too. On the right side here, you'll see that I do have sub-farm settings and group settings. And so this is the ability to create groups of fields or sub-farms that are also different groups of fields and edit those from this page. And so maybe you have, in my case, I have a couple different sub-farms here. I have my A sub-farm, my B sub-farm. I can go into this sub-farm menu and I could create a new one if I had other fields that I had yet to assign, or I can review them too. So I can say, okay, what do I currently have? What exactly is even in sub-farm B? What's in sub-farm R and A? And so I can view that and kind of delete and manipulate that from this page too. Let's go to the land attributes table. That has a little bit more information at the field level, mostly related to soils and slopes. So that stuff is probably pretty familiar. I'll note that you do have the ability to sort these tables. Oops, this one seems to not be sorting. There it goes. It was just a little slow. Anytime you see those little arrows up and down, that means that you have the ability to click on that column name and sort by that. Soil test is pretty similar, so I won't spend a lot of time on that, but maybe I'll just point out that in version 3 of SnapPlus, one important thing to be aware of as you're learning is that often the row that you have highlighted, you know, when you click in a table, you can see I have a row that turns blue here, kind of bluish gray. Often the row that you have highlighted makes a difference for how the rest of this page works and what you're able to edit. So what you're seeing here is that I have a table at the top of my screen with 2 different soil test dates, and then I have my averages. When I click a different one of those rows, I've got a 2022 and a 2018 set of samples. Clicking those actually changes, if you watch my phosphorus and potassium values here, it's changing the different soil tests that I'm looking at. So when I have 2018 selected, what I'm seeing here is my soil samples at the bottom that are going into creating those 2018 averages for field 1, which is the field that's selected in the upper left-hand corner here. So I can go through and I can pick different fields if I want to be looking at soil tests or adding soil test information using that menu in the top left. I can also filter. Let's say that this is a really big farm and actually I have not just like 9 fields, but I have 50 fields. I have a ton of fields and I don't want to have to scroll through all of those to find what I'm looking for. You can also filter here based on group or based on subfarm. So maybe I just am only working on subfarm A right now. When I select that from the drop-down menu, it's going to cut down my list of fields that are available here to maybe make it a little easier to navigate if you're used to working in terms of subfarm and things like that. Let's see. So that is a little bit more about group and subfarm. Let's see, and I do have one comment about, oh yes, that sort of the industry standard here would be client, farm, and field for the base data structure. Is one standard. And I think this relates to what I was just describing in terms of having subfarms and things like that. So the comment is that maybe version 3 is an opportunity to correct this. And what I'm curious about is, so we don't call it client, but if we talk about this plan as client and then is farm, I wonder sort of what I'm talking about is subfarm, and then field is obviously the field level. So that's a good point, and I can follow up on that particular comment too. See if what I talked about does or does not address what that's describing. So let's go in and look a little bit at maps here. And so some of the features in Snap Maps and the layers will look familiar to you, although we have a slightly different user interface and layout here. And one of the big changes between version 2 and version 3 is that the maps and the changes that you make on maps are automatically integrated into the program. So that means that you don't have to take that extra step of doing the upload or the download when you do changes in maps. So if I'm in here and I edit any part of this field or another field, that is going to be automatically saved in the database and reflected, and I don't have to go in and sort of import that data and confirm the changes like you would in version 2. So let's just take a quick tour of this page. What we're looking at here, we're looking at field 1. On the left side, I have this panel where the layers tab is selected, and I'm seeing that I have my layers, which layers are turned on or not turned on here based on the checkboxes. And a few of these menus, we tried to make this layer list because it's quite long. We tried to help a little bit with that by making some of these foldable and nested. So you'll notice that I'm able to open and close some of these here and make that a little bit easier. The second tab that appears in this panel would be the edit tab. So if I click over here, I see that I get a list of different feature types. And so if I wanted to edit or create one of these features, like a new field, I would do that from this edit menu and be able to go in and make that change. So if I wanted to add a field, I would click on field, and I see that I've selected field in this menu, and I would click on add new. And then just like you do currently in SnapPlus, then you would go through and you would draw these, draw these boundaries. So I'll just quickly do kind of a ugly version here. And then once you have gone through and defined the boundaries, we'll close that off there. Then you have the chance to name the field. So this would be my new field, and save it on the map. And then when I go back here, oh, looks like it's taking a second to show up there. There's my new field. And then if I want to, oops, looks like I overlapped that a little bit. So if I wanted to edit that field, I could go in and click on that and have the chance to change the field name or any of my other fields by, again, being in this same edit menu. I can not only create new fields from that menu, but I can click and edit existing ones. And you can see which one I have highlighted on the map surrounded by the blue line here. And then if I want to make any changes, I would save them. Since I haven't changed it, I'll just click cancel because I want to leave that field as it is. So you can see the other feature types that you're able to add here. And there's a few that I think are not yet on this list, especially as it pertains to some of the Silurian. If you're working in the Silurian bedrock area in Wisconsin, we do have some additional layers that will be specific to those different bedrock depth ranges that are happening here. Other parts of this page, you'll notice that although I have my layer names checked here in terms of what I can see, there's not an actual legend showing what the different symbols mean. That is one update and improvement that I think we've been able to make, is that we've been able to take some of those map symbols and make them responsive to the layers that you have turned on. So you see that I clicked this little I button and now I can see which of my map symbols, what they look like. But this list of different symbols is responsive, or it changes based on what you have checked. So keep your eye on the spreading method, spreading prohibited rather. If I get rid of my manure prohibited checkbox here, that map symbol comes off the list. So this is an attempt to make it a little bit easier when you have layers turned on to actually find, what is this specific symbol? I know in version 2 of Snap Maps, that's a really long list of layers on the left side. So sometimes you're scrolling up and down and trying to match up, like what color is this hash mark thing? Where is that on the map? Hopefully this makes it a little bit easier if you're trying to figure out what you're seeing, to have this legend be a little bit more responsive. Other features on the left here, some of which are still coming, are the ability to filter by field attribute on the map. You can still measure distances and areas with these tools. And then if you're uploading or downloading shapefiles or data, that would be this up and down arrow button here. And then of course, the ability to download and save maps as PDFs. If we are hoping to zoom to different fields, we can do that here in the search bar. So right now I have search for field selected. If If I click into that, I can find one of these and click on a field name, and it'll zoom me to the extent of that field. If I'm just starting out and first creating these and I don't already have my fields drawn, I can also search by a specific address and type that address into this box here and start to type that, and I'll get some different options for things that might match the address that I start to type. And that's a way to quickly get somewhere that you want to go within maps. I change my search setting by clicking this little gear button here. So a lot of these features you can currently do in version 2 of Snap Maps, but it maybe just looks a little bit different. And hopefully you're seeing a lot of the same functionality that you're used to seeing within version 2. Let's see, next I'll move quickly to field restrictions. I don't see any additional comments in the chat. So the field restrictions table, similar to version 2 SnapPlus, if you're using Snap Maps, most of this information is populated for you. So if you are in there drawing your field boundaries in Snap Maps, then we can use that information to populate and check some of these boxes, most of these boxes automatically for you. Of course, some of these things you might change over time or might be something that you go in here and check manually, which you can do. But for the most part, I think many people will never have to be in here checking and unchecking these boxes if you are using the version of maps here in SnapPlus. So I select the different field that I'm seeing up here in the left. I can also select the relevant crop year, and then again, filtering my list by different groups or subfarms. If we go to the nutrients tab, I think a lot of these names will look familiar. We have, again, a manure and biosolids tab, fertilizers, grazing is coming soon, nutrient systems, and then some livestock storage and spreader calculators. So this is similar in content, although it of course looks a little different than version 2. Right now, what we're seeing on the manure page is that I have just one source in my list, which is this dairy semi-solid source. And all of this information about the source and about the annual volume and the applications was extracted from that version 2 database that I uploaded. So all this information that I'm seeing matches up with what would be the source name and information in version 2. If I had other manure sources in my list, for example, if I add another one here, so this would be my, let's say I'm going to add a dairy liquid source. And then I would pick from my list here. Once I have multiple sources, again, I'll just point out that when I highlight a different source in that list, then the manure analysis that I'm seeing down below corresponds to that source. So because I just added this dairy liquid source, right now all I'm seeing is a book value for the manure analysis, but I could go ahead and add relevant manure analyses that I had if I had them for that source using this button. My table here for the manure applied by season in the year that we have selected is here in the upper right-hand corner. And again, that will update as you add sources and change sources in this table. I think we'll skip some of these tabs because they're very similar to version 2, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about crops and building your crop rotation on the management page. So right now, when we click on the management page, the view that we have by default is called the field view. And so right now we're looking at field 1, and this table lists our crops. One new thing in version 3 is that when you add a crop, you add it by year and then this plant season, that's new, and then you pick the crop, and of course the yield and the tillage. And so the place where this, and we do the conversion automatically, and so the place where this is going to look different, or you might see some changes, is if in SnapPlus version 2, you have selected any of our crops that are double crops. So this would apply especially to things like cover crops, where you have, maybe you're used to selecting something like corn silage with winter rye cover crop or something like that. And that used to be one selection that you made. In version 3, that looks like 2 different rows in this table. So let's just go ahead and say that we're in 2027, we're planning for let's plan for corn silage. And that would be my 2027 corn silage crop. Then let's say I plan to put in a cover crop after the corn silage is harvested. So in that case, I would be adding a new crop in the same calendar year. So I know we kind of go back and forth between calendar and crop years in SnapPlus because there's reasons to use one or the other. On this particular table, calendar year we're using just to help get things in the right sequence. So if I think about, okay, my cover crop is going on after the corn silage, that would still be in the 2027 calendar year. I would go ahead and pick a season, which would be late summer, fall, after the corn silage is harvested. And then I could go in and I could find the relevant cover crop for me. So one of the things that we've done here is we've broken up the cover crop timings for the late summer and fall into August, September, and October options. So this gets at, depending on what that preceding crop was during the season, that cover crop might be going on during different times. So let's just say that this is going to go on in September. I would pick that crop from my list and then go back in and select it. It's a cover crop, so it's got a 0 yield because it's considered not a harvested crop. And then I would pick a tillage. So in version 2, this might have looked like 1 row, 1 crop selection. In version 3, it's going to be converted to 2 rows that are specific to each of these different things being planted. So that is one change that you might see, but we hope it makes it a little bit more flexible and easy to build some of these rotations and build things up according to what you see and what you have. I'm seeing a few things in the chat, so I think I'll just pause. Dave is asking for consultants that do not use Snap Maps but have their own GIS software to create application restriction maps. Is there a way to upload the various spreadable acres similar to how it is currently done in the spreadable acres tab in version 2 of SnapPlus? Let's see. So then I think I'm not sure if I'm totally I'm going to go back to the page where I think that this is happening. So Dave, are you saying that you would want to upload your spreadable acres and then that would automatically update them in this table based on what you do in your GIS software? You have a number for these spreadable acres and you want to be able to upload and have these numbers update to reflect what you got from your GIS? I might not be getting that totally right because I've not done that upload in version 2. So let me know if that is the situation or if I'm not getting it right. Yes, okay. That is a good question that we have not yet done an import for these acres, but I will put it on the list to ask the team about. So I'll take note of that. And then Jen is asking, the ability to delete all boundaries, wells, and other things, etc., is really helpful when layers are updated each year from third-party software and imported. Okay, and so like I have a question about that, Jen. So is that you want to be able to sort of bulk? It sounds like you want to be able to delete many different features all at the same time and maybe not one by one. Is that okay? V2 has it now. Okay, that's something I'll follow up on. I know that we can still edit those, and you'll still have the ability to import those layers. So you can import a shapefile with boundaries. You can import a shapefile with wells. So that will still be an option too. And I can check on how it'll work in version 3 too. Version 3 also, yes. All right, good questions. All right. I'm gonna keep going a little bit with this management page. So we've mostly looked at the crops right now. At the top, I'll point out that we have the rotation settings here on the left, and the black box that's outlining the screen is showing what I currently have set for my rotation. So right now I have my rotation starting in 2021 and has a length of 6. So I've got these 6 years included, 6 crop years. If this is one area again where crop year and calendar year can sometimes be confusing, but just keep in mind that these 2 crops here are being planted in the same calendar year, but we consider this 2027 as the start of the next crop year. So that can get a little bit confusing sometimes, but hopefully with the labels we'll make it clear which one you're looking at. Your filter, if you have filter strips or things like that, up here would be from this menu. And then the calculate erosion button is what I would press in order to get all these different values for my soil loss. And then my phosphorus, PI stands for phosphorus index, soil conditioning index, and my stir value. So you can see I pressed that calculate erosion button. I had a quick error or quick progress bar along the bottom. And then we had those numbers update at the top here. All right. Let's talk a little bit about applications, then I want to move quickly to reports to talk about reports. So what I did was I clicked on this Show Applications tab here at the right, and that opens up more information so I can still see my crops. But then this is where I would go ahead and actually add my different fertilizer and manure applications. So as I select different rows in my table on the left, you can see that the different applications are reflected here. And then if I have a compliance message or a flag associated with that application, that's what you're seeing showing up with this little red mark here on the right side under more. So I can click on the arrow and open up a little tab and see what exactly that message is and what I might need to do, or maybe add an explanation to address that specific situation. We do also still have an annual view, so I'll quickly show that. We've been looking at the field view, which is one field across multiple years. The annual view is showing you all your fields for one specific year. So this would be all my fields in 2023 or 2024, and you can go through and see that information and customize some of what you're seeing by showing or hiding columns with this menu here. So maybe you don't want to see some of this information, you need to make some space on your screen. That would be one way to do it here, is by eliminating some of these columns, free up a little bit of real estate for yourself. Let's look a little bit at reports. I see, maybe one question that's actually related to reports that just popped up from Travis. Will reviewers be able to see the justifications to the flags, such as the nutrient recs, if they exceeded recs, changes made to the slope, or similar changes made by the planner? Yes, so the answer for the justification piece is yes, we will be able to see those explanations in the compliance report, and then you will still be able to click in that button and see that explanation just like I did over here. So you'd be able to see, if you weren't looking in a report, but you were just viewing the plan, you would still be able to do that and be able to see the explanation here. So that is a good question. Changes made to the slope and some of those other things in the table, the way that that shows up, if something is edited manually, I'll just do it here with the acres. Like if I go in here and I edit this by hand and I say like, okay, 25 or something like that, oops, which is not a valid number. See. What I'm seeing is that I see a little lock here, and that's saying that I overwrote whatever data was in that cell. And so that has been changed by hand. And that's one way that you'd see if that data had been changed and sort of overwritten from what would have been imported from the maps data. Okay, briefly, I'll look at reports. So we just have a subset of reports available right now for you to look at. One of them would be this 590 checklist. And so we've made a couple updates to how this goes in SnapPlus. A few of the questions that the planner needs to answer sort of by hand that SnapPlus can't fill out automatically, we've added those as steps in the process. So you have a chance to pick why the plan was developed, and then address some of these questions in the checklist that the planner has to confirm or explain. So I'll click through these kind of fast. I know you're all probably familiar with the checklist, but all this does is it adds your answer, yes, no, or not applicable. It'll add that to the final checklist. So I'm just going to click through and say yes to these questions, and then I'll get to a final page that says generate my report. It'll go through and SnapPlus will check all the different parts of the application or the checklist that it can check and update. And then what it'll do is give you a download that is the Word document with that formatted checklist that you're used to seeing. So one question that we have gotten with reports is, okay, we're making our plan edits online, but can I still download reports, or is that all online too? And the answer to that question is that you can definitely still download reports. So if you are used to doing that and having PDF or Excel, that is how you would do it on this page. You might have seen that I clicked through, I had a little download here for my 590 checklist, and that actually opens up a Word document on my other screen here, which I can pull over quickly. So that's the same checklist that you're used to seeing. This one is for my Riverside farm that I've been showing you. And then very quickly, I just want to show we do still have the option to do things like Excel output. And one addition that we've made is a little bit of ability to customize here. Let's say that you make a lot of these spreadsheets for yourself, or you're making reports or things with the spreadsheet. You can go ahead and hide columns from the report. If you have columns that, let's say you never have tiled or irrigated fields, you don't even want that stuff to show up when you generate the report, you would go in and hide those columns here and just have a little bit more ability to customize what shows up when you generate that specific report. All right, I see it's at 12:01. So I'm going to stop there because I think that's kind of the end of the demonstration time that I had. But I just want to emphasize again that back on the homepage, if you do have questions or issues as you're logging in and trying this out, don't forget that you can email us at this support email that I'm highlighting here at the top. So that email goes out to multiple of us, and we're happy to address your questions or suggestions and try to do what we can to make this easier to use for folks.